Imagine living in a kingdom ruled not by a noble monarch, but by a man whose private obsessions shape the destiny of an entire nation. What if your king cared more about his twisted pleasures than the fate of his people? Could one man's vices really drag down an empire already fighting to survive? And how much would you endure under a ruler whose scandals became more notorious than his victories? This is the story of Ferdinand VII of Spain, a king so reviled for his cruelty, corruption, and perversions that history remembers him not as a savior of his nation, but as one of the most disastrous monarchs Europe ever produced. When Ferdinand was born in 1784, Spain was already a declining empire. The days of conquistadors and global dominance were long gone. Britain controlled the seas, France was rising as a superpower, and Spain's colonies were restless. By the time Ferdinand came to power, the Spanish throne needed a strong hand, a reformer, someone capable of pulling the country out of chaos. Instead, they got Ferdinand. Known as El Deseado, the Desired One, he was initially celebrated by the Spanish people as a potential savior. But behind closed doors, Ferdinand wasn't preparing to lead a nation. He was indulging in obsessions that would make him infamous. Ferdinand VII's reign wasn't just a disappointment, it was a catastrophe. After Napoleon's invasion of Spain in 1808, Ferdinand was imprisoned in France, and for a brief moment, Spaniards saw him as a symbol of resistance. They imagined that once he returned, he would free the country from foreign domination and usher in an era of reform. But when he came back to the throne in 1813, those hopes were crushed almost instantly. Instead of embracing progress, Ferdinand tore up the liberal constitution of 1812, a document that could have modernized Spain with parliamentary representation and limited monarchy. Overnight, he reinstated absolute monarchy, bringing back censorship, repression, and the iron grip of the Inquisition-style state. His regime hunted down liberals, reformists, and anyone suspected of dissent. Thousands were imprisoned, tortured, or executed under his rule. Villages whispered his name in fear. To many, Spain was no longer moving forward but sliding backward into medieval tyranny. And while Spain desperately needed modernization, railways, industry, new trade policies, Ferdinand was more interested in consolidating his personal power and silencing opposition. He relied on a secret police network to root out enemies, while showering his loyalists with wealth and titles. The monarchy became synonymous with corruption. But his worst crime wasn't just political regression. It was his neglect of Spain's empire. While Ferdinand wasted time indulging his whims, Spanish colonies in Latin America seized the chance to declare independence. Leaders like Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín fought successfully against Spanish forces. One by one, Spain's colonies slipped away, leaving Ferdinand presiding over a shrinking, weakened kingdom. What had begun as hope for El Deseado, the Desired One, quickly turned into bitter disillusionment. The king the people once cheered was now cursed as a tyrant who destroyed Spain's future. If Ferdinand had only been cruel, his legacy might resemble other despots in European history. But what made him infamous were the bizarre, perverse obsessions that dominated his private life. Behind palace walls, Ferdinand turned the Spanish court into something resembling a theater of scandal. He was notorious for surrounding himself with mistresses, often far younger than him, and flaunting his conquests shamelessly. Unlike rulers who kept their affairs discreet, Ferdinand seemed to revel in gossip and shock. His fixation on sexual indulgence was so consuming that it distracted him from affairs of state. Diplomats reported that audiences with the king often ended abruptly so he could retreat to his chambers for private pleasures. Marriage for Ferdinand was less about love and more about obsession. He went through multiple wives, some of whom endured humiliating treatment at his hands. His desperate desire for an heir, and his inability to consistently produce one, fueled constant rumors about his virility. Courtiers whispered that doctors and priests were consulted in bizarre rituals to restore his masculinity, turning the monarchy into a spectacle of ridicule. Even as Spain crumbled around him, Ferdinand seemed more interested in orchestrating lurid encounters behind closed doors than addressing the collapse of his empire. His personal life became so scandalous that foreign observers mocked him as one of Europe's most disgraceful monarchs. The king, who had once been celebrated as Spain's savior, had, in just a few years, become a figure of disgust. His cruelty, combined with his notorious debauchery, earned him the title of one of the most perverted kings in history, and ensured that his name would forever be linked with shame rather than glory. When Ferdinand finally died in 1833, Spain was exhausted. The empire had collapsed, the economy was broken, and his oppressive rule had left scars across society. His death did not bring peace. Instead, it sparked a succession crisis, with rival factions plunging Spain into the bloody Carlist Wars. His reputation never recovered. Even today, Spanish historians often call him the worst king in Spain's history. His legacy wasn't one of conquest or glory, but of decline, shame, and the reminder that sometimes a single ruler's character can doom an entire nation. So, how does a king remembered as the desired one end up as one of the most hated rulers in Europe? Ferdinand VII's story proves that power in the wrong hands can destroy nations. His perversions, cruelty, and selfishness didn't just define his reign, they accelerated Spain's downfall and cemented his place as history's cautionary tale. History is filled with kings and queens whose legacies shaped nations, but Ferdinand VII stands out as a monarch who led his country to ruin with his own twisted obsessions. If you thought his story was shocking, wait until you see our deep dive into another wild what if. Could US Marines overthrow the Roman Empire? That video explores the ultimate clash between modern firepower and ancient legions, and the results will blow your mind. Make sure to check it out next.